After being betrayed by my best friend, I discovered a dark secret that could destroy him. Now I must decide whether to expose the truth or protect his life. In January 2007, my son was born. His mother was somewhat abusive towards me, and we'd been apart since the previous summer. For the first few years, I barely saw him, but as he got older, he'd visit more and more frequently. Usually he'd sleep at my parents' house when visiting because my apartment was very small. But when I moved in 2019, he started sleeping on my couch when he visited and was visiting once a month on average. When he visited, we mostly played video games, watched movies, that sort of thing. We'd also text a lot when he wasn't visiting. He lived with his mother, his stepfather, and 3 younger siblings, a 12-year-old half-sister with Down syndrome, and 2 younger brothers whose ages I don't know. I only specify his sister's condition because it's relevant. The last time I've seen him was last Christmas. Due to school and his job at the time, he didn't visit me in January. Then, the first week of February, he stopped replying to texts. I was worried, and then in mid-February, I received a letter from CPS. I was worried something had happened to him. Now I wish that was the case. I was told he'd been taken into custody after one of his brothers saw him having sex with his sister. Obviously, this was shocking news. After that revelation, I had to speak with CPS a couple times and his lawyer. But I made it clear to them that due to the nature of this crime, I didn't want any contact with him. And while I would answer any questions they had for me, I wanted to otherwise be cut off from him and the case. They understood, and since he didn't live with me, I wasn't in any sort of trouble or investigation. Initially, my parents offered to take him in to help him and get him through his final year of high school, which he would have been starting a couple weeks ago, intending to just not tell anyone why he was living with them. I made it clear I was uncomfortable with the idea, but they brushed it off at first, and even seemed to be trying to guilt me for being uncomfortable with him being around. They stopped these plans when my sister told them she knew what happened. She is a bus driver in a school district, and of course, details of what happened made their way around the school pretty quickly. My sister told my parents that if he came to live there, none of the other grandkids or great-grandkids would be allowed to visit. My parents, of course, love having their grandkids visit, especially since my mother retired this summer and now has more time to babysit. So they called the lawyer and said they would no longer take him in, and they stopped guilting me for my desire to cut off contact. They do still ask me sometimes if I've heard more, and my mom has some contact with his maternal aunt. But beyond that, I haven't heard anything new from him in months. I've always had a bit of uncomfortableness with him due to how his mother treated me when we were together. But I never showed that around him, and I always treated him well. His lawyer, his counselor, a teacher of his I went to school with, everyone told me how highly he spoke of me. So despite everything, it still hurts that I've essentially lost my son. He knows how I feel about things like sex crimes and crimes against children, and he did both. The only thing I've heard about him being cut off from me is he's upset about it, but he apparently understands my decision. Beyond people who are involved, only my 2 closest friends know what happened, because of course I needed some support during all this. And while I know I'm not the primary victim in all this, of course, I still feel like a victim. I don't know details on how long this had been going on, but apparently the time he was caught wasn't the first time. And knowing he could have been doing this for months and acting like everything was still normal disgusts me. As does the knowledge that, since he's 17, they aren't making him register as a sex offender. All of this has been stressful on me, even though my actual involvement with the courts has been minimal. I'm glad CPS understood my desire to cut off contact, and I'm glad my parents came around. And in all honesty, I don't think I've made the wrong decision. But that doesn't make the decision easy to live with. I don't think I have it in me to forgive him for this. But this is still my son, someone who has been part of my life for the past 17 years. And now suddenly he's gone. It's difficult to deal with the contradiction of missing him while simultaneously never wanting to see him again. So I didn't know what else to do besides just make a throwaway account and ran a bit. Try to get this off my chest among people who are completely uninvolved with the situation. Edit. What exactly do people expect me to have done prior to this? You people are acting like I'm rich or something. I can't exactly afford to buy a house with enough room to raise a child. I'm on disability. I can barely afford to support myself, let alone a second person. It's also not like I could just demand he be removed from the mother's home. That was attempted in 2020 when there were other complaints made against his mother and stepfather, though related to the youngest child, not him. And CPS decided things were fine and didn't want the kids removed. Also, some people have suggested he may have been abused himself. I of course have no way of being certain, but from what he's told CPS, he wasn't. I have no way to determine if that's true or not. But in the past, I've told him that if there had been anything that was going on, to tell me, a teacher or his grandparents, so we could get him out of there. But he never said anything. It doesn't matter that I tried to spend more time with him. I didn't have custody, and the courts didn't find reason to change things prior to this. She had full custody. If I said, hey, I want him this week, and she said no, I couldn't do anything about it. Some people here don't seem to realize that just because someone is a parent doesn't mean they can do whatever they want with a kid. Update. Just an update with a few details. As I said, I'm on disability and unable to have him live with me, even if this hadn't happened, as the law requires someone of his age to have their own room with a locking door. I've been on disability for about 12 years now, due to panic anxiety disorder and agoraphobia. I was put on disability when I was fired from my job at McDonald's for having a panic attack during a lunch rush. I did try to get custody when he was 4, because at the time I was living somewhere where I had an extra room, as I wasn't on disability yet and wasn't forced to move into a low-income apartment yet. But it was denied, likely because his mother owned her house at the time, given to her by her parents, and had married. I don't know his other siblings' ages because they aren't my kids, and my son didn't like to talk about them. The most I'd hear about them was him complaining. They were annoying when he wanted time to himself. He also never made any claims of either his mother or stepfather abusing him. I told him he could tell me if they did, but he didn't say they did. He may have been lying, but I have no way of knowing that. While doing things like watching movies was the main thing we did together. It was due to the cost of doing other things. We'd play board games, go for walks at a nearby park, visit my parents, that sort of thing. And on that note, another reason he liked coming here was that I actually cook, while his mother usually just did takeout or TV dinners. I did take him trick or treating twice because he happened to be visiting while it was going on. My parents had previously tried to get custody in 2020, when CPS was called on them because his youngest brother, around 2 or 3 at the time, had been escaping the house through windows and playing in the street or a gravel pit across the road. But when CPS stopped their investigation, the only thing they really said was that his mother couldn't keep forcing him to babysit his siblings due to his age. My parents live about 3 miles away from me, so if they had gotten custody, he'd have been at my house a lot. As I said, she was somewhat abusive towards me. Specifically, she would hit me sometimes, constantly insult me, and would make me have sex with her when I didn't want to, including not letting me sleep at night until it was done. My therapist believes this is why I developed panic anxiety disorder, as it started when I was living with my ex. This last thing, I can't speak to the validity of, as I heard it from my sister, who heard it from another bus driver, who allegedly heard it from one of the brothers. Supposedly, while my son had his own room, the siblings all slept in his mother and stepfather's bed, and allegedly they'd have sex, even when the kids were there. Though it said they didn't touch the kids, that's still wildly inappropriate. If this is true, my son never said anything about it, so I had no way of knowing it was going on. I told him that if anything bad was happening, to tell me, his counselor, or my parents right away, and he never did. And if I don't have access to that information, I can't do much about it. He'd gotten into some trouble when he was in middle school. The first time was when he knocked a classmate into a window at school and broke it. The classmate wasn't injured, and they both said it was because they were practicing tackles, as they were both on the football team at the time. The second was when he made a joke about making a bomb, or at least he says it was a joke. Given recent events, I'm starting to doubt that he wasn't genuinely considering it. And lastly, last summer, he spent more time with me than just once a month, as he was working at a store in town, and my apartment was closer than his mother's house. She let me have him over more frequently, so she wouldn't have to drive him to and from work, since I could pick him up, take him home, then take him back to work the next day. This went on until December, when he was fired for some sort of joke he made with a coworker that a customer overheard. I don't know the specifics of what he said, as he didn't want to talk about it. Though, as with the previous joke, I'm now wondering if it was actually a joke, or if he was genuinely doing something inappropriate. Second story: after escaping my brother's bullying and surviving cancer, my high school started bullying me, humiliating me for my bald spots, cutting my hair, and physically assaulting me until my mom caught us and punched him, then changed my school. Now, years later, the same bully contacted me, apologizing and wanting to be friends. I've been bullied a lot in my life, mainly by my brother, mainly when I was really young, and in middle high school a lot as well. I attended 2 different high schools. My brother pulled a knife on a family member and my school found out. They sent me to live with my mother while living with my mom for about a year, almost 2 actually. I was severely bullied. I found out I had ovarian cancer, not long after I moved in with her and her husband. My tumor was 20 pounds, the size of a basketball, and ruptured when removed. I was out of school for a while. My hair was falling out, and I was stressed eating. I came back to school with a hat pass from the nurse to hide my bald spots from the stress-induced hair falling out. I wore a mask and a bandage over my incision. This is where my bully, Eric, a football-playing senior, while I was a sophomore, started harassing me daily. Here's a brief list of the things he did to me before I moved away. This isn't even half of all I put up with. He pulled my beanie off in the hallway and mocked my bald spot in front of a crowd. Punched me in the stomach, causing my staples in my incision to loosen. Ghost Aftamat referred to me as a hunchback. I couldn't hold weight on my back due to the pain and weakness in my abdomen. Gave me a black eye and a busted lip routinely. Stole my homework and would rip it up or flush it in the men's room. Pulled my hair, attempted to cut my hair with scissors. I broke and flushed a family heirloom necklace that I wore all the time. Told everyone I was contagious. And if they touched or spoke to me, they too would get cancer. My mom lived in the backwoods, so kids believe this. I told my mom everything, and she'd go to the school. Nothing got better. It escalated to me crying in the bathroom and walking out to being beat up again. Except my mom was coming to pick me up for a doctor's appointment and saw this. She punched Eric, got in touch with his parents, and told him she hit him and how he treats a cancer survivor. And I moved back to my grandma's, who lives 60 miles away. I graduated and put all of this behind me and have moved on with my life. I got a Facebook message from Eric last weekend. He basically just says that he now lives a lot closer to me, and he wants to meet up and talk things out about the past. Of course, I'm iffy about going. A part of me doesn't care what he has to say. Another part of me wants to give him a lecture about how he made me feel. I believe all he wants to do is meet up and get coffee or lunch and talk about things. And that's probably going to be the end of it, as I really don't want anything further from this guy after everything I went through. I still haven't responded. But is it worth going? And what about the aftermath? Edit. I messaged Eric back after getting off of work. And we are meeting at Starbucks tomorrow afternoon. And I'll update everyone here. Update. My post didn't get a lot of traction initially. However, I wanted to provide people with an update if they were curious about how things went. I did agree to meet my bully at a Starbucks. And I decided, at the very worst, at least I got some yummy coffee for my troubles. I was early, just to be early, I guess. My mom instilled this "you're never too early" mentality in me as a kid. So I ordered my coffee and some breakfast and my weakness, a cake pop. I waited around, and then the moment of truth happened. I saw Eric. It was a bit surreal. I considered leaving, walking away, and never responding to him again. But you don't improve if you don't struggle, right? I relaxed a bit, and he sat down across from me with his coffee and the bit of food he ordered. Before I could even open my mouth, he apologized profusely. It was one of the most sincerest apologies I've ever gotten in my life. He looked me dead in the eyes and told me he's been in therapy. And after all the therapy sessions, he can't get over all the pain he put me through. I felt weird, but what do you say to the guy who made almost 2 years of your life miserable? I didn't want to hold it over his head, but I did let him know that I don't think I'll ever forgive him for the things he did to me back then, and that while the things he did don't haunt me anymore, they're just a part of life for me. We talked about a few more things he did to me before I moved away, way too personal graphic for Reddit, so I won't say them here. And he told me he doesn't want to be the bad guy anymore, and he seems to want to forge a friendship out of this. I'm not sure it's something I can do, but thanks for all the advice from everyone who noticed my little post. I'll update any further if you guys want me to. Update. My 20F high school bully, 23M, threw me a surprise party for the day. I was cleared of cancer 4 years ago. Then he suddenly kissed me. Now what? I posted about my high school bully, Eric, before. I gave a short list of everything he did to me in a previous post. Since then, we've become friends. It's hard to say. My high school bully and I are getting coffee, going to the park, etc. But it's been what we've been up to since the initial meetup. I had ovarian cancer at 16. The anniversary of my remission status was last Saturday, and I didn't plan to do anything for it since. Well, I never do anything for it. Eric asked me if I'd be up for hanging out after work, and I agreed. I had to go and change since I was at work when he asked me. I knock on the door, Eric opens the door, and we walk to the kitchen, where a bunch of people I don't really know or don't recognize jump out and congratulate me for surviving cancer and how strong I am. I get the intention, but I just went to a doctor after pain didn't go away. But there was cake, alcohol, and burger shot dogs. It was a nice little celebration. I don't drink, but Eric does socially. I got a headache, so I was outside to get air, and Eric offers me a drink. I say no thanks, so he drinks it instead. We were talking about the party. I turned to face Eric when he asked me a question, and he kissed me. It lasted a few seconds. I really didn't know how to react to it. It just happened. After I waited for something Sumyan to grab Eric's attention, I quietly left. Eric called me, but we didn't talk about the kiss. But I could tell he wants to bring it up since he was out of character on the phone recently. I'm not sure what to say. We're friends, I guess. But things are still awkward as I'm waiting to see what happens. Should I invite Eric out to clear the air? Should I write this off as an intoxicated blunder? TLDR. A bully turned sort of friend threw a surprise party for me, then suddenly kissed me. We haven't talked about it, but I'd like to, and I believe he does as well. Is it better to see it as an accident? Third story. My now ex-friend exposed my past disgusting ex-life to my husband. Now my coward husband threw divorce papers at me, offering to pay my college loans. I signed a prenup, thinking he was a gentleman. So how can I challenge the prenup and claim the half of his assets I deserve? I'll try and keep this short. We've known each other for 5 years, been married for 2 years, and up until last weekend things were perfectly fine. Maybe once in a while we'd bicker about money or something. But 99% of the time, we were happy together. While out last weekend for a friend's birthday, a now ex-friend of mine told my husband about a relationship I had in college. My husband knew about my college boyfriend. But obviously, I didn't share intimate details about our ex-life. Well, it came out that I used to engage in threesomes with him and his male roommate. Probably 12 to 15 in total. But all my husband knows is that it was more than once. College was a totally different time in my life. I was drinking every weekend, doing recreational drugs every month, partying, having casual flings just like everyone else at that age. It was a hedonistic, live-for-today lifestyle that I thankfully grew out of. I look back on those years with a lot of regrets, and not just about my ex-life. I mean, it was 10+ years ago. I'm a totally different person now. Regardless, I know my husband sees me in a totally different light. He hasn't slept in our bed since he found out, and he's barely spoken to me all week. I'm so scared he'll divorce me. I'm walking on eggshells, just trying to stay out of his way while he works through this. I really want to sit him down and clear the air. I just don't know where to begin. I feel like one slip of the tongue, and our relationship could be completely over. I know I'm not a good person for keeping this from him, so please don't lecture me. It was a chapter of my life I thought I'd close for good. It was my one secret, and I honestly debated telling him about it, but came to the conclusion that no positive outcome could come from it. TLDR, my husband M, 34 of 2 years, found out some of my F31 sexual exploits in college. He has barely talked to me since he found out, and I'm afraid our relationship might be finished over something I did 10 years ago before I even knew him. Relevant comments, commenter people don't change that much. It could be that he just simply knows more about how you view sex now, and it may not be compatible with his own views. Pulling a three-way with 2 dudes 10 to 15 times, that's a whole lot of sucking and effing. It shows a lot about how you like to be treated and what you crave. I honestly don't blame him for being creeped out about that. OP, most times there was drugs or alcohol involved. It's not something I'd ever want to do at this age. Like I said, it was a lifetime ago. Hook 80, is your husband upset that you used to be Zuli adventurous because he has a moral problem with it? Or is it because you are not Zuli adventurous with him? And I don't just mean having threesomes. I mean fun, passionate XOP. He's never complained about our Zul life. I didn't want to go into explicit detail, but people are asking. And it's an anonymous account. So here it goes. My main limitation is that I won't do anal, which I know he enjoys. It's just not pleasurable and often painful for me. I don't like him coming on my face. My body is fine, and mine is fine. And not that he's ever asked. I'm done with Group as X for good. Delete it. Honestly, I don't think you've done anything wrong. And if there's something that occurred when he wasn't in your life, whatsoever is a deal breaker for him, then you are better off. He's being a childish idiot about it. The past was meant to stay in the past, and I don't believe you were obligated to talk to him about your Zool exploits with previous partners. The way he is acting is ridiculous. I understand he may be bothered by it, but wow, handle it like a man, dude. OP, I'm not better off without him. This is the man I love. We've built a life together. A divorce would completely ruin my life. How did her husband find out the information? He was talking to an old friend of mine on a night where we were all drinking. My friend claims it was a drunken slip of the tongue, but she has a history of pulling SHD like this. I'm 100% done with her. I no longer consider her a friend. Edit. No. I came to Reddit because I'm looking to save my marriage and don't want to discuss this with friends or family. Update. 2 days later. As of this morning, we still hadn't slept in the same bed or spoken more than 10 words to each other in passing. As I was waking up, he was walking in the front door with 2 coffees. He sat me down at our kitchen table and finally opened up to me. Basically, he feels that he was conned his word into the marriage, saying that he wouldn't have even dated me, let alone married me, if he'd known what he knows now. His view of me has been irreparably changed, and he no longer sees me as someone worthy of being his wife. Quoting him here, loving prick beyond the actual aspect. He says he no longer trusts me because I kept something this big from him our whole relationship. Nothing I could do or say could convince him that these were past mistakes and not reflective of who I am today. He wasn't angry with me. He didn't call me an SLT or anything like that. Never once raised his voice. Part of me wishes he did, although I can't exactly say why right now. It felt like I was being laid off from my job. So that's it. We're getting divorced. My supposed life partner turned his back on me without a second thought. He didn't even have the decency to discuss it with me first, apparently. He visited his lawyer during the week, and the process is in motion, his words. Knowing him, there is absolutely no changing his mind. My husband owns multiple businesses and wouldn't get married without a prenup. I sign it, honest to God, thinking we'd never ever have to use it. Well, he had the loving document with him this morning. He said he'd pay off the remainder of my student loans, which he isn't legally obligated to do. While I appreciate that, I'm going to meet with my lawyer this week and see if the agreement can be challenged in court. We have built a life together. I gave him 5 of the best years of my life, and I've been 100% faithful to him. I don't deserve to be tossed out like a piece of trash. So that's it. My life turned upside down in the span of a week over something I did 10 plus years ago, before I even knew him. It's loving asinine. The thing is, even as I wrote the original post, in the back of my mind, I knew he was through with me. He's ended friendships and business partnerships over less. TLDR, my husband finally spoke to me and is apparently proceeding with a divorce. Relevant comments. Deleted one. I'm curious. Why are you looking to challenge the prenup in court? Do you feel that you have a right to his assets or money from his businesses? Or are you just being a vengeful person? Were you an investor or founding member of any of these projects with him? Were you instrumental in their development and success in any material way? Don't give me this emotional support crap. The whole time you were supposedly emotionally supporting him, he was using the proceeds from his businesses to provide for you. That's the deal in a marriage. Now that the marriage is ending, the monetary support from his businesses is going to be cut off from you. He's being generous by offering to pay off your loans. It sounds like you're just being a spiteful, be looking to suck as much of his money as the legal system will allow. Deleted 2. It's within her rights to contest it, and the courts will decide whether she has a case or not. Oh, exactly. What do I have to lose? To protect his fragile ego, I have to start my life over at square one. I'll probably have to move in with my parents. I don't even know if I'll have a car by summer. I get why he's mad. I totally get it. He just didn't even give us a chance. He doesn't know our relationship won't work out. He didn't even try. He effing ran to his lawyer and executed a contingency agreement without even talking to me. He's taking the coward's way out, and it destroys my life in the process. Macaroni and milk. I seriously don't know what the EFF is going on in this thread, where the devoted comments are about how it's all on you because you're a effing liar. This is the same subreddit that will tell most posters that their sexual past is no one else's business, barring diseases or sex work. Maybe these people only read your update and assumed you had both of those from him. I don't know. Either way, you did nothing wrong. If your sexual past was such a big deal for him, he should have asked you some questions, not just assumed you were some pure little angel living in a bubble just waiting for this one specific man to come whisk you away. If having a sexual past is a deal breaker and he didn't question you, that's on him, not you. Lawyer up, make the split, and go find some guy who won't judge you for actions that happened 15 years ago and have no bearing on him whatsoever. Oh, never said I was a virgin. We met when I was like 25. Come on. Anytime I mention an ex-boyfriend, not sexually, just in conversation, like, oh, I went a destination with ex-boyfriend, he'd get pissy and unhappy. He never came out and said it, but I could tell it made him uncomfortable. So early on in our relationship, I made the conscious decision to stop talking about my past boyfriends completely. Thank you for watching the video. If you're interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.